Hey everyone, welcome back, and today let's solve Leetcode problem 1233, remove subfolders from the file system, the daily Leetcode challenge or highlighted problem. So we're given a list of folder, and we need to return the folders after removing all the subfolders in those folders, and we can return the answer in any order. So if a folder at index I is located within another folder at index j, it is called a subfolder of it. And a subfolder of folder at index j must start with folder at index j, also followed by a slash or a string of a slash. So for example, if our current string is a/b, that's going to be a subfolder of /a. But /b is not a subfolder of /a/b and /c. So the format of a path is one or more concatenated strings in the form of the string slash, followed by one or more lowercase English letters. So for example, the folders /leetcode and /leetcode/problems are valid paths, while an empty string and just a slash are not. Okay? So in example 1, we have the input folder array to be the following. I'm not going to read that out because it's going to take way too long. And we'd output /a/c/d and /c/f. Because folders /a/b is going to be a subfolder of /a, and folder /c/d/e is inside of folder /c/d. And so since they are actually in our file system, we're going to only output /a/c/le and /c/c/f. That's a tongue twister. So in example 1 or 2 rather, we have the input array folder to be the following, and we'd output only the /a folder. The reason why is because the other two folders /a/b/c and /a/b/d will be removed because they are actually subfolders of just /a. And finally, in example 3, we have the folder to be /a/b/c, /a/b/ca, and /a/b/d, and we'd output hence /a/b/c, /a/b/ca, and /a/b/d, because none of them are actually conflicting. They all are actually valid folders that aren't actually subfolders of any other folders. Okay, so with that out of the way, I will give you guys a few seconds to kind of just go over this problem in your head and think of a valid solution, and then I'll show you guys how I would optimally solve this problem. And quick note, really make sure you pay attention to this important line of constraint. Each folder name is going to be unique. That erases the case of really handling any weird edge cases when we have duplicate characters and looking at and handling that case rather, right? Okay, so the way we're going to really structure our algorithm, first we have to sort the folders lexicographically. And if we do that, all the folders with the same prefix like /a and /a/b will be grouped next to each other. Okay, and we also have to use a variable to track the last valid folder we actually kept. And as we iterate through the list, if a folder is not a subfolder of the previous valid one, we need to add it to the result. And ultimately, we just have to return that result list, which is going to only contain the top level folders. All right, so with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and dive straight into the code here. So like we were talking about before, we have to sort the input array in lexicographical order. So I'm just going to say folder.sort. It's pretty simple. In Python, we don't need to pass in any key or parameters in this sort method or function. We just have to sort it based on lexicographical order. And that way, folders with the same prefix are going to be grouped together. So for example, /a would be before /a/b, because /a is shorter and it also alphabetically precedes /a/b. And this is so important because this ensures that when we encounter a folder like /a, we can effectively ignore all of its subfolders like /a/b as we actually traverse or iterate through our input array folders. Right? So once we do that, now we can initialize our result list. So I'm going to say result is going to be equal to an empty list. And this is going to store the top level folders that are not subfolders of any previously seen folder. right? And once we do that, now we can initialize prev or previous to be an empty string because we haven't actually iterated through the array yet. Okay, I don't know why that formatted like that. Right, well again, this is going to keep track of the previous valid folder, right? It's going to store the, in other words, last valid folder we actually added to the result. And we have to use this to check if the current folder is a subfolder of prev. Right, so once we do this, now we can regularly iterate through our input array folder. I'm going to say for f in folder, f kind of being an alias or iterator of folder. So for f in the input array folder, oops. Okay, now this is where we have to have our main conditional or check if we can actually add this valid folder to our result, if it's actually a valid folder that isn't a subfolder of anything else or not. So we have to say if not prev, and f starts with prev and the f at the index of the length of prev is actually equal to our desired slash, then, only then, we can actually add to our result or result.append the current folder f. Pretty lengthy conditional here. I'm going to kind of boil it down or break it down into all of its different subparts in this conditional. So this is going to filter out the subfolders, right? So first we have to check if the prev folder is not empty, and that obviously makes sure that we actually have a valid folder to compare. Then we need to check if f starts with prev, and as you can see in Python, that's pretty straightforward. If it starts with the previous folder's prefix, okay? Then we actually have to ensure that the match is exactly at the boundary. And so, for example, the /a should match /a/b, but it should not match /abc, right? And if all of these conditions are true, it does mean that it means that f is a subfolder of prev, and so we have to skip adding it to our result because we don't want subfolders. We only want non-subfolders. And if it's a subfolder, meaning all of these conditions yield to be true, we cannot add, or we have to add to our result. Okay, and finally we'll set prev to be equal to f. So again, we have to check if not, because if any of these conditions are true, then we cannot add to result. But if not is true for all of these results, so if not all of them actually happens, then we can add to our result the current folder, meaning that it's not a subfolder of the prev, and so we can add it to that result list and update the previous folder, right? So again, on line 9, after we actually add the current folder, if it's valid, to the result, we have to update the prev to track this new valid folder. And this basically makes sure that in the next iteration, we can check if the upcoming folder is a subfolder of this new prev, right? And at the end of the day, after iterating through or traversing through this input array folder and only adding non-subfolders to our result list, we can exit this for loop and simply return the list because it will have filtered out all, return the result because it will have filtered out all of the subfolders in our input array folder. So as you can see, if I were to submit this, unless I made any syntax errors here, this should work. Okay, let's see what I did wrong here. Let's just quickly check. So for f in folder, f at index length of prev is equal to a, okay, let me just, f starts with, I think that's how you spell it, correct me if I'm wrong, and f at the index of the length of the prev, if it's equal, okay, that's quite odd. I'm not exactly sure why we don't have a valid test case here. Let me just run this to see what's wrong. Okay, same thing here. So it's not a temporary bug. Yeah, feel free to just kind of fast forward this part. It's just kind of me debugging my weird code here. But as per what I have seen, this should actually work. So it's kind of confusing of why this isn't actually working. We do folder.sort correctly. It's just if in this conditional here, but prev and f dot starts with prev should be fine. Okay, that's my bad. So I actually forgot to put all of this in parentheses. So this should be all embedded within parentheses like this. So now this should work. This should be an accepted solution. And as you can see, this is just about as efficient as you can get. My issue was I only put this conditional in the parentheses and didn't worry about this being not, and so this didn't actually come out right. But I embedded now all of this conditional into one parenthesis to check if all of it is not, and only then we can add the current folder to our result, indicating that it's not a subfolder and it is valid. But as you can see, this is just about as efficient as you can get. So if you guys enjoyed this solution and learned something new, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And let me just quickly explain the time and space complexity and what this code really does as a whole, right? So first we have to sort this folder paths to actually ensure that subfolders appear next to their parent folders, right? And then we have to iterate through each folder, and we simply check if it's a subfolder of the previous added folder, which is stored in the prev string or variable. And if it's not a subfolder, only then can we add it to the result, right? Because that's we want to filter out all the subfolders and only add the non-subfolders of our input array folder. And eventually, the function is only going to return the top level folders, essentially filtering out all the nested subfolders, right? So for the time complexity of this code, sorting this list is obviously going to be a big O of n log n operation, where n is again the number of folders, and iterating through the folders is going to be a big O of n, or linear time operation, and so the total time complexity is going to be big O of n log n, or n times log n. And for the space complexity, of course, we're storing that result in a list, which is going to be big O of n space in the worst case if no folders are actually subfolders, and so the overall space complexity is going to be big O of n. So again, if you guys enjoyed this solution and learned something new, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And without further ado, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.